If I hadn't picked up his phone that night, I would have never known my marriage had already ended. He was in the kitchen, humming softly while stirring something in a pan. The smell of garlic and butter filled the air, warm and familiar. It was the kind of evening that used to make me feel safe. Used to. Can you check my phone? He called out casually. I think it just buzzed. I didn't think twice. That's the part that still haunts me. I wiped my hands on a towel and walked over to the counter where his phone lay face up. The screen lit up just as I reached for it. A message from a name I didn't recognize. Lena. And below it, just 4 words, I miss you. I remember staring at those words longer than I should have. Like if I looked hard enough, they would rearrange themselves into something innocent. They didn't. My first instinct wasn't anger. It was confusion. Because my husband, Daniel, wasn't the kind of man who cheated. At least, that's what I had believed for 8 years of marriage. I swallowed, my fingers tightening around his phone. Who is it? He asked from the kitchen, still not turning around. I could have walked in there. I could have asked him directly. I could have done what a normal wife would do. But something in me shifted. Instead, I tapped the message open. The conversation history loaded instantly. And just like that, my entire world cracked open. This wasn't the first message. Not even close. Scrolling up, I saw weeks, maybe months, of conversations. Late-night texts. Inside jokes. Plans. Photos. My heart started pounding so hard I thought I might drop the phone. And then I saw it. A message from him. From my husband. I wish you were here tonight. The kitchen suddenly felt too small. Too quiet. Too fake. Hey, he called again, a little louder this time. Who is it? I stared at the screen. At her last message. I miss you. And in that moment, something cold and sharp settled inside me. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't confront him. I did something worse. I typed. Then come over. My hands didn't shake. Not even a little. I hit send before I could think. Before I could stop myself. Before I could go back to being the woman who trusted her husband. The typing bubble appeared almost immediately. 3 little dots. 3 seconds that felt like a lifetime. Then her reply came. Are you serious? I glanced toward the kitchen. Daniel was still cooking. Still humming. Still living in a version of reality that was about to collapse. I looked back at the phone. And typed again. Tonight. 8 p.m. Another pause. Another set of dots. Then, okay. Just like that. No hesitation. No guilt. No questions. She agreed. I locked the phone and set it back down exactly where it had been. Then I walked into the kitchen. Daniel turned toward me with a smile. Who was it? I smiled back. And for the first time in 8 years. I lied. Just a spam message, I said lightly. Nothing important. He nodded, already turning back to the stove, completely unaware that in less than an hour, his entire life was about to walk through our front door. I set the table with more care than I ever had before. 3 plates, 3 glasses, 3 sets of silverware. Every movement felt deliberate, controlled, like I was performing a role I hadn't rehearsed for. Daniel noticed, eventually. Are we having someone over? He asked, glancing at the extra setting. I didn't look up. Yeah, I said calmly. A guest. He frowned slightly. At this hour? I finally met his eyes. And smiled. You'll see. At exactly 8:07 p.m. The doorbell rang. Daniel froze. Just for a second. But I saw it. That flicker of something. Recognition? Fear? Guilt? Maybe all 3. I'll get it, I said, already walking toward the door. Every step felt heavier than the last. But I didn't stop. I opened the door. And there she was. Standing right in front of me. The woman who had just told my husband she missed him. She looked younger than I expected. Nervous. Uncertain. Holding her purse like she wasn't sure she should be here. Hi, she said softly. I know who you are, I replied. And then I stepped aside. Come in. The moment she stepped inside, I could feel it. Everything had already changed. Not loudly. Not dramatically. But in that quiet, suffocating way, like something fragile had finally cracked beyond repair. I'll take your coat, I said, my voice steady, calmer than I felt. She hesitated for a second before handing it over, her fingers brushing mine. They were cold. Nervous. Good. That meant she wasn't entirely sure what this was. Which meant Daniel hadn't told her everything. Perfect. Dinner's almost ready, I added, gesturing toward the dining table. You're right on time. Behind me, I could hear him. Or rather, I could hear the silence. The kind that only happens when someone realizes something is very, very wrong. I turned slightly. Daniel was standing just outside the kitchen, his eyes locked on her. On Lena. And in that one frozen moment, everything I needed to know became painfully clear. Recognition. Shock. Fear. He knew her. Of course he did. But the look on his face wasn't just guilt. It was panic. The kind of panic that comes when your secrets don't just get exposed. They walk through your front door. Daniel. I said lightly, almost teasing. Aren't you going to say hello? He didn't answer immediately. His mouth opened slightly, like he was searching for words that didn't exist. Hi. Lena said first, her voice smaller now. She glanced between the two of us. Something wasn't adding up for her. Not yet. But it would. Oh. I cut in smoothly, saving her from the awkwardness. I'm sorry, I didn't introduce myself. I stepped closer to her, extended my hand. I'm his wife. The word hung in the air like a gunshot. Wife. Not girlfriend. Not roommate. Not anything vague. Wife. Lena's expression shifted instantly. Confusion. Then disbelief. Then something sharper. She looked at Daniel again. And this time, she didn't look soft. She looked like someone who had just realized she'd been lied to. You didn't tell me, she started. Let's sit. I interrupted gently, as if none of this was unusual. Food's getting cold. I pulled out a chair for her. She didn't move right away. Neither did he. So I sat first, picked up my glass, took a slow sip of water, and waited, because silence was doing all the work for me. Eventually, they followed. Daniel sat across from me. Lena sat to his right. Not next to him. Not close enough to touch. That distance. That was new, and I noticed it. Oh, I hope you like pasta, I said casually, serving Lena first. Daniel said it's your favorite. That was a lie. A calculated one. Because I wanted to see how she'd react. Her fork paused midair. She turned to him slowly. You told her that? Daniel's face went pale. No, I didn't really. I tilted my head, feigning confusion. That's strange. You mentioned it last week. He looked at me like he'd never seen me before. Good. Because the woman sitting across from him now wasn't the same one he thought he married. We ate. Or at least, we pretended to. The room was thick with unspoken words. Every clink of silverware felt louder than it should. Every glance carried weight. I watched them carefully. Every micro-expression. Every hesitation. Lena wasn't stupid. That much was obvious. She wasn't flirting. She wasn't relaxed. She was recalculating. Which meant one thing. She didn't know. Not everything, at least. So, I said after a few quiet minutes, placing my fork down. How long have you two been working together? Simple question, but loaded. Daniel stiffened. Lena answered first. About 6 months. 6 months. I felt that number land somewhere deep in my chest. 6 months of messages. 6 months of lies. 6 months of me sitting across from a stranger every night, thinking he was my husband. Wow, I smiled softly. That's about the same time you started staying late at the office more often, isn't it, Daniel? He didn't respond. He couldn't, because now the timeline wasn't just in his head anymore. It was out in the open, where everyone could see it. Lena set her fork down. Slowly. Carefully. Then she looked directly at me. Not him. Me. Why did you invite me here? She asked. There it was. The question. The moment where everything could explode. But I didn't rush it. Didn't raise my voice. Didn't accuse. I simply smiled. Because this was the part one had been waiting for. I just thought, I said calmly, folding my hands on the table, that if someone tells my husband they miss him, I let the sentence hang. Just for a second. Long enough to make it hurt. They should be brave enough to say it in front of me. Silence. Heavy. Unavoidable. Lena inhaled sharply. Daniel looked like he might actually be sick. And me? I felt something I hadn't felt in hours. Control. But this was only the beginning. Because what neither of them knew yet was that I had already seen everything. Every message. Every plan. Every lie. And dinner? Dinner wasn't the confrontation. It was just the setup. For a moment, no one moved. Not Daniel. Not Lena. Not even me. It was like the entire room had frozen in place, caught between what had been said and what was about to come next. Lena was the first to break. I didn't know, she said, her voice low but steady. He never told me he was married. I didn't look at Daniel. Not yet. Because right now he didn't matter. What mattered was her. The woman who had walked into my house thinking she was wanted, and was now realizing she had been lied to just as much as I had. I figured, I replied softly. And I meant it. Because if she had known, she wouldn't look like that. Not confused. Not angry. Not betrayed. That wasn't the face of a woman stealing someone else's husband. That was the face of someone who had just realized she'd been played. Daniel finally spoke. "Okay, this is getting out of hand," he said, forcing a laugh that didn't reach his eyes. "We can talk about this later." Later. He really thought there was going to be a later. "No," I said calmly. "We're talking about it now." My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to, because the silence that followed was louder than any argument. Lena leaned back slightly, her arms crossing instinctively. "How long?" she asked. Not to me. To him. Daniel hesitated. "Too long." And that hesitation? That was the answer. "I asked you a question," she pressed sharper now. "How long have you been married?" 8 years, I answered for him. Her eyes snapped to mine. 8 years. You could see it in her face. The moment, everything recalculated. 6 months with her. 8 years with me. That wasn't an accident. That was a pattern. "You told me you lived alone," Lena said slowly, each word more controlled than the last. It's complicated," Daniel started. "No," she cut in. "It's not." And just like that, the shift happened. Subtle, but undeniable. She wasn't on his side anymore. I leaned back in my chair, watching it unfold. I didn't interrupt, didn't rush it. Because the best part about truth is that once it starts coming out, you don't have to force it. It tears everything open on its own. "You said you were working late," I added quietly, still not looking directly at him. "Almost every night." Daniel clenched his jaw. "Can you stop?" he snapped. "Stop what?" I asked, tilting my head. "Talking." His hands tightened into fists on the table. "You're blowing this out of proportion." I let out a small laugh. Not loud, not dramatic, just enough. "Out of proportion?" I repeated. "You've been lying to both of us for months." "That's not." "Then explain it," Lena said coldly. He looked at her, really looked at her. And for the first time since she walked in, he didn't have control. "I was going to tell you," he said finally. "That line. That predictable, empty line." I almost smiled. "Which one of us?" I asked. Silence. Again. But this time, it hit harder. Lena pushed her chair back slightly. Not enough to stand, but enough to create distance. From him. From the situation. From the lie she had just been living in. "I feel sick," she muttered. I nodded. "I know." Because I did. I remembered that exact feeling. That moment when your reality doesn't just crack. It collapses. Daniel stood up suddenly. "This is insane," he said, running a hand through his hair. "Both of you are acting like I committed some crime." That's when I finally looked at him. Directly. Fully. And whatever he saw in my expression made him stop talking. "Didn't you?" I asked. My voice was quiet. Almost gentle. But it landed like something heavy. Something final. Lena's eyes moved between us again. But now, there was something different in them. Not confusion. Not hesitation. Understanding. The kind that comes too late, but hits all at once. "You told me you wanted something real," she said to him. "I do," he insisted quickly. "With who?" she shot back. Another pause. Another crack. And that's when I decided it was time. Not for everything. Not yet. But for just enough. Enough to change the game. "I think," I said slowly, reaching for my glass again. "We're missing something important here." They both looked at me, waiting. And for the first time since this started, I had their full attention. Good. Because this, I gestured lightly between the three of us. This isn't just about feelings. I let that sink in. Watched their expressions shift. Confusion again. But different this time. Deeper. "What do you mean?" Lena asked cautiously. I smiled. Small. Controlled. Dangerous. "I mean," I said, setting the glass down with a soft click. "You didn't just lie to us." I looked at Daniel. Held his gaze. "You used us." That word changed everything. Used. Not loved. Not confused. Used. Daniel's face went pale. And that reaction? That was all the confirmation I needed. Lena noticed it too. Of course she did. "What is she talking about?" she demanded. He didn't answer. He couldn't. Because now, we weren't just talking about an affair anymore. We were getting closer to the real reason behind it. And me? I leaned back slightly. Completely calm now. Because I knew something they didn't. Something I hadn't said yet. Something that would make everything so much worse. The word used didn't just hang in the air. It settled. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Unavoidable. Lena's eyes didn't leave Daniel. "What does she mean?" she asked again, slower this time, like she was bracing herself for something worse. Daniel didn't answer. He couldn't. Because for the first time since this started, The story wasn't his to control anymore. I reached for my fork, twirling the pasta slowly, almost casually. Almost. You know, I said, my tone light, like we were discussing something ordinary. I almost didn't invite you. Lena blinked. Why not? Because I wasn't sure if you deserved to know, I replied honestly. That landed harder than anything else I'd said. Not cruel, just precise. Daniel slammed his hand lightly on the table. Can we stop this? He snapped. This is going nowhere. I looked up at him. Calm. Measured. No, I said. It's going exactly where it needs to. Then I turned to Lena. You said you've been working together for 6 months, right? She nodded slowly. Yes. And he told you he lived alone. Another nod. Yes. I smiled faintly. Did he also tell you why he suddenly started getting more responsibilities at work? That made her pause. Her brows furrowed slightly. He said he was being considered for a promotion, she replied. There it was. The first crack. I let out a soft breath. Of course he did. Daniel's chair scraped loudly against the floor as he shifted. Stop, he warned, his voice lower now. You don't know what you're talking about. I didn't even look at him. Because I did. And he knew it. You're in HR, right? I asked Lena. Her eyes widened just a fraction. How do you? I read everything, I said simply. No need to elaborate. No need to explain. The message was clear. Everything. Lena turned back to Daniel, something sharper in her expression now. You said you needed my help reviewing internal reports, she said slowly. That it was confidential. Daniel didn't respond. Didn't deny it either. Which, in situations like this, was the same thing. I leaned forward slightly, resting my elbows on the table. He didn't need your help, I said gently. He needed your access. That word hit differently. Access. Not assistance. Not collaboration. Access. Lena's face went still. Completely still. What kind of access? She asked. Her voice wasn't shaky anymore. It was controlled. Careful. Like she was already piecing it together. Daniel finally snapped. That's not what this is about, he said sharply. You're twisting things, am I? I cut in quietly. And just like that, he went silent again. I reached beside me and picked up my phone. Slowly. Deliberately. I didn't just read your messages, I continued. I read the attachments too. Lena's eyes flicked to the phone. Then back to Daniel. Then back to me. What attachments? She asked. I unlocked the screen. Scrolled. Then turned it slightly so she could see. Just enough. Not everything. Not yet. Her eyes moved quickly over the text. The numbers. The file names. And then, recognition. That's, she whispered. That's internal compensation data. I nodded. Yes. She looked at Daniel again. But this time, there was no confusion left. Only anger. Cold. Focused. You told me those were for a compliance review, she said. I mean, he stammered. But it was too late. Because now she knew. He's been using you to pull restricted data, I said calmly. Salary structures. Bonus projections. Executive changes. Lena pushed her chair back sharply. You said this was approved, she snapped at him. You said legal signed off on it. Daniel stood up. This is being blown way out of proportion, he insisted, but his voice cracked slightly. It's not illegal. It's absolutely illegal, Lena shot back. And that was the moment everything shifted again. Because now, this wasn't just about betrayal. Or lies. Or cheating. This was about risk. Career-ending risk. I stayed seated. Watching. Letting it unfold. Because the truth is, I didn't need to attack him anymore. He was doing that to himself. You dragged me into this, Lena continued, her voice rising now. Do you have any idea what happens if this gets audited? Daniel didn't answer. He couldn't. Because now he wasn't defending a relationship. He was defending a mistake. A calculated one. I leaned back slightly, folding my arms. You wanted the promotion, I said, finally looking at him again. Didn't you? His jaw tightened. That's not. You needed insider data. I continued, cutting him off. And she gave it to you, because she trusted you. Lena let out a short, humorless laugh. Trusted, she repeated. Right. The room felt different now. Heavier. Colder. No more illusions. No more pretending. And Daniel? He looked smaller. Not physically, but exposed. Like someone who had just realized he wasn't losing one thing. He was losing everything. But the worst part? We weren't even done. Not even close. Because what neither of them knew yet was that I had already taken this further than just a dinner conversation. Much further. I picked up my glass again. took a slow sip, and smiled, not out of joy, but certainty. Dinner, I said softly, is just the beginning. The word beginning lingered longer than anything else I had said that night, because now they were both starting to realize the same thing. This wasn't spontaneous. This wasn't emotional. This wasn't a wife who just found out and reacted. This was something else, something planned. Lena was the first to notice it. Her eyes didn't leave me this time. Not Daniel. Me. You already knew, she said slowly. Not a question, a realization. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I placed my phone gently on the table. Screen down. Controlled. Measured. Because timing was everything. Daniel exhaled sharply, running his hands through his hair again. This is insane, he muttered. You're acting like you've been investigating me. I finally looked at him. And for the first time that night, I let a small smile slip through. I have. Silence. Immediate. Total. Lena's posture straightened. What do you mean investigating? She asked. I tapped the phone lightly. Once. Twice. 3 weeks ago. I began calmly. You left your phone unlocked on the couch. Daniel froze. I wasn't looking for anything. I continued. I wasn't suspicious. Not yet. That part was true. I saw your name pop up, I said, glancing briefly at Lena. And then I saw the message. Her jaw tightened. I didn't confront him, I went on. I didn't even open the conversation that night. Daniel blinked. Confused. Because that wasn't what he expected. Then what did you do? Lena asked quietly. I waited. That word landed differently. Heavier. Colder. I watch patterns, I said. Late nights. Locked screens. Calls taken outside. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. Every detail I mentioned was a memory he couldn't erase. And then, I continued. I opened the messages. No emotion. No hesitation. Just fact. Lena swallowed. You read everything? Yes. I didn't soften it. Didn't sugarcoat it. Because the truth didn't need help. Daniel scoffed weakly. So what? You read texts. That doesn't mean anything. It means everything. I cut in, my voice still calm but sharper now. Because I didn't stop there. That's when his expression changed. Again, I picked up my phone and turned it over. Unlocked it. And this time, I didn't hide the screen. I backed everything up, I said. Lena leaned in slightly. Daniel didn't move. Didn't dare. Every message, I continued. Every file you sent. Every document she gave you access to. Lena's breath caught. You copied them? She asked. Yes. Simple. Final. Daniel let out a harsh laugh, but it sounded forced. You're overreacting, he said quickly. That's not proof of anything. That's just screenshots, I said. He stopped. And timestamps, I added. Silence again. And login records, I finished. That's when it hit him. Fully. Completely. There was no way out of this. You accessed company systems through her credentials, I said, looking directly at him now. From our home network. Lena's head snapped toward him. You what? I didn't, he started, but the words fell apart before they could form. Because he knew. He knew I wasn't guessing. I checked the IP logs, I said. Not loudly. Not aggressively. Just enough. Lena stood up abruptly. Her chair scraped harshly against the floor. You used my login? She demanded. Daniel didn't answer. He couldn't. Because now, this wasn't about perception anymore. It was evidence. You told me it was temporary access, she continued, her voice shaking now, not from confusion, but anger. You said it was for internal review. I was going to fix it, he said quickly. I just needed time. Time to do what? She snapped. Sell it. The word hit hard. Even harder than anything I had said. Daniel's silence was answer enough. Lena took a step back from him. Then another. Like she needed distance just to think. To sell it, she repeated under her breath. I watched her carefully. Because this moment, this realization, was the turning point. I didn't report it, I said quietly. Both of them looked at me. At the same time. Lena frowned. You didn't. Daniel blinked. You're bluffing, he said quickly. If you had proof, you would have. No, I interrupted. And this time, my voice carried something different. Something colder. I didn't report it, I repeated. Because I wanted to understand exactly how far you were willing to go. Silence. Heavy. Uncomfortable. And now I do. Daniel stared at me like he didn't recognize me anymore. And maybe he didn't. Because the woman sitting in front of him now wasn't reacting. She was finishing something she had already started. Lena's voice broke the silence. Again. What are you going to do with it? She asked. That question, that one question, was the one I had been waiting for all night. I picked up my glass, took a slow sip, set it down carefully, and then I smiled. Not wide, not dramatic, just enough to make them both uneasy. That, I said softly, depends on what happens next. And just like that, the power in the room shifted completely. Because now, they weren't wondering what I knew. They were wondering what I was going to do with it. For a few seconds, no one spoke. But this time, the silence didn't feel uncertain. It felt final. Daniel was the first to break. "This is insane," he said again, but weaker now, like even he didn't believe it anymore. "You're turning this into something it's not." I didn't respond, because there was nothing left to argue. Only truth. And truth doesn't need volume. Lena let out a sharp breath. "You used my credentials," she said, her voice steadier than before, but colder. "You accessed restricted files from your house." Daniel shook his head quickly. "It's not like that." "Then explain it," she snapped. He opened his mouth, closed it, looked at me, then back at her. And for the first time that night, he had no version of the story left. "I was under pressure," he said finally, his voice cracking slightly. "You don't understand what it's like at my level." "At your level?" I repeated softly. That phrase, that arrogant, detached phrase. It almost made me laugh. "You mean the level where you lie to your wife?" I continued. "And manipulate a coworker to get what you want?" "That's not what It is," Lena cut in sharply. And that was it. That was the moment she stopped giving him space. She stepped away from the table completely now, putting physical distance between them. "I trusted you," she said, quieter this time. But somehow that made it worse. Not just personally, professionally. Daniel took a step toward her. "Lena, listen, don't," she said immediately, raising a hand. "Don't come any closer." He froze, mid-step, like something invisible had stopped him. I watched it all without moving, without interrupting, because this was the collapse, and it needed to happen fully. "You told me you were building something real," Lena went on, her eyes locked on him. "That you were tired of being alone, that you wanted something honest." Daniel ran a hand over his face. "I did mean that," he said quickly. "I wasn't lying about everything, just the important parts," she shot back. Silence. Again. But this time, it didn't feel like a pause. It felt like an ending. I stood up slowly. Not abruptly. Not dramatically. Just enough to shift the energy again. "You weren't lying about wanting something," I said, walking around the table. Daniel turned toward me. Cautious. Almost afraid. "You wanted control," I continued. "Step by step, I moved closer. You wanted access. Another step. You wanted leverage." Now I was standing directly across from him, close enough to see the panic in his eyes clearly. "And you thought you could take all of that," I finished quietly, "without consequences." His jaw tightened. "You don't know what you're talking about," he said, but the words lacked force now. They sounded rehearsed. "Empty, don't I?" I asked. Then I picked up my phone again, unlocked it, and this time, I scrolled. "I saw the messages where you talked about timing the release," I said calmly. Lena's head turned sharply. "Release what?" she asked. I didn't answer her immediately. Instead, I read directly from the screen. "Once I get the numbers finalized, I'll know exactly when to move." Daniel's face drained of color. "That wasn't about us," he said quickly. "That was about market positioning." I cut in. He froze. Lena stared at him. "You were planning something," she said slowly. "Something with company data." Daniel shook his head again, but weaker this time. "It's not illegal. You don't even sound convinced of that," she snapped. I locked the phone. "Set it down." "You weren't just cheating," I said, my voice low but steady. "You were building something on the side." Daniel didn't deny it. Not this time. Lena let out a breath that almost sounded like a laugh. But there was no humor in it. "You were going to use me," she said. "And then what? Disappear?" He didn't answer, because the truth was already written all over his face. I stepped back slightly, creating space again, but not releasing control. "You didn't just betray one person," I continued. "You built your plan around two." That line hit hard. Lena's expression changed again. Not confusion, not even anger. Something sharper, colder, more focused. "Do you have any idea what this could cost me?" she asked him. Her voice wasn't raised, but it didn't need to be. Daniel swallowed. "I would have fixed it," he said weakly. "You mean covered it up?" she replied. Another silence. But now, it felt different. Because the truth wasn't unfolding anymore. It was settled. "And Daniel?" He wasn't defending himself anymore. He was shrinking. I didn't mean for it to go this far, he said quietly. That line. That final, pathetic line. I looked at him. Really looked at him. And for the first time that night, I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel pain. I felt something else. Something colder. Clarity. That's the problem, I said softly. You never thought it would. Lena turned to me. Her expression completely different now. No hesitation. No confusion. What are we going to do? She asked. We. That word changed everything. I didn't answer right away. Because now, this wasn't just about exposure anymore. This was about what came next. And for the first time that night, I let myself smile. Just slightly. Now, I said quietly. I glanced at Daniel. Then back at her. Now we decide how much this is going to cost him. The word we didn't just change the conversation. It changed the balance of power. Daniel heard it too. Of course he did. And for the first time that night, I saw something new in his eyes. Not denial. Not anger. Fear. Real fear. No, he said quickly, stepping forward. No, we're not doing that. We. He said it like he still had a say in it. Like he was still part of the decision. Lena didn't even look at him. Don't, she said flatly. You don't get to say we anymore. That landed harder than anything else so far. Because it wasn't emotional. It was final. I pulled my chair out slowly and sat back down. Not because I needed to, but because I wanted to signal something. Control. You're right, I said calmly, folding my hands on the table. He doesn't. Daniel let out a frustrated breath. This is getting ridiculous, he said. You're acting like this is some kind of operation. I tilted my head slightly. That's because it is. Silence. Again. But this time, it wasn't heavy. It was sharp. Focused. Lena walked back to the table, but she didn't sit. She stood across from me. Close enough to speak quietly. Far enough to stay guarded. What exactly are you thinking? She asked. Straight to the point. Good. That meant she was already moving forward. I studied her for a second. Not her face. Her posture. Her tone. Her control. She wasn't panicking anymore. She was calculating. First, I said, we don't rush. Daniel laughed under his breath. You're serious? He said. You're actually planning this? I ignored him. Completely. Because he didn't matter anymore. If we act too quickly. I continued, still looking at Lena, he'll try to fix it. Fix what? Daniel snapped. Everything, Lena answered for me. That was the moment I knew. She was in. Fully. He'll cover his tracks, I said. He'll delete data. He'll shift blame. He'll make you look like the one who gave him access willingly. Lena's jaw tightened. Because she knew that was true. And you? She asked quietly. What about you? I didn't hesitate. He'll say I'm unstable. Daniel scoffed. You are. Stop talking. Lena cut him off sharply. He went silent. Again. I leaned back slightly. Relaxed. Because now the conversation was exactly where I wanted it. So, Lena said, crossing her arms. What's the plan? I let a small pause stretch between us. Just enough to make her lean in. To make Daniel nervous. Right now. I said. We let him think this is over. Daniel blinked. What? I finally looked at him again. Directly. You apologize, I said calmly. He frowned. What? You apologize, I repeated. To both of us. Lena turned toward me, confused. Why would we? Because, I said quietly. We need him to relax. That word. Relax. It didn't sit well with him. You think I'm just going to play along with this? Daniel snapped. I held his gaze. Steady. Unblinking. You already are. Silence. Because deep down he knew. He didn't have leverage anymore. If you walk out right now, I continued, you lose everything. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't threaten. I just stated it. Your job, I added. Your promotion. Your reputation. Each word landed heavier than the last. And if we stay quiet? Lena asked. I nodded slightly. Then you get time, I said. Time to secure your position. Time to protect yourself. She considered that. Carefully. And him, she asked. I glanced at Daniel. Then back at her. He gets comfortable. That word again. Comfortable. Daniel shook his head. You're both out of your minds, he muttered. This isn't some movie. I almost smiled. No, I said softly. It's not. Because movies end quickly. This was going to take time. And what happens after that? Lena asked. Her voice was lower now. More controlled. More dangerous. I leaned forward slightly. Just enough to close the space between us. We build the full picture, I said. Not just messages. Not just access logs. Everything. Lena's eyes narrowed. What does that mean? It means, I continued, we find out exactly what he was planning to do with that data. Daniel stiffened. And then, she asked. I held her gaze. Didn't look away. Then we decide where it goes. That answer was enough. For her. But not for him. You think you can control this? Daniel said, his voice rising slightly. You think you can just, destroy me? I stood up again. Slowly. Deliberately. No, I said. And for the first time, there was a hint of something sharper in my tone. I think you already did that yourself. Silence. Lena exhaled slowly, then nodded once. Okay, she said. Just one word. But it sealed it. She turned back to Daniel. Her expression completely different now. You're going to apologize, she said. Not asking. Telling. He looked between us. Searching. For something. An opening. A weakness. There wasn't one. And after a long, heavy pause, he finally spoke. I'm sorry, he said quietly. It wasn't sincere. It wasn't enough. But it didn't need to be. Because this wasn't about forgiveness. It was about what came next. I picked up my phone again. Locked the screen. Set it down. And for the first time that night, I let the silence settle without breaking it. Because now, everything was in motion. And he had no idea how far this was about to go. No one spoke for a while after that. Daniel's apology still hung in the air, thin, empty, almost meaningless. But that was fine. We didn't need sincerity. We needed time. Lena was the first to move. She pulled her chair out again, this time sitting down slowly, her posture more composed than before. More intentional. Okay, she said quietly, looking at me. We do this your way. Daniel let out a short, disbelieving laugh. You can't be serious. Neither of us looked at him. Start from the beginning, Lena continued. What exactly did you find? I nodded. That was the right question. I picked up my phone again, but this time, I didn't open the messages. Not yet. Do you remember? I asked her. About a week ago, when there was that internal meeting about restructuring? She frowned slightly. Yes, the executive compensation adjustment? Exactly. Daniel's shoulders stiffened. And do you remember? I went on. How quickly certain numbers seemed to change. Lena's expression sharpened. Because now we were getting into something real. Something she recognized. That wasn't finalized data, she said slowly. It was still internal. I nodded. Yes, internal, but very valuable. Daniel shook his head quickly. You're twisting this, am I? I asked calmly. Then I unlocked my phone, scrolled, and turned the screen toward Lena again. This is from 4 nights ago, I said. A message. From Daniel. If I get the updated compensation sheets before the announcement, we can move before the market reacts. Lena's eyes widened. We? She repeated. Her voice dropped lower. More dangerous. I tapped the screen once more. Scrolled further. Another message. It's not insider trading if it's not public yet. It's just timing. The silence that followed was different. This wasn't emotional anymore. This was something else. Something colder. Something with real consequences. You're planning to trade on this? Lena said, her voice barely above a whisper. Daniel stepped forward. It's not like that. Then what is it like, she snapped. He opened his mouth. But no explanation came. Because there wasn't one that could fix this. I locked the phone again. Set it down. Slow. Deliberate. You weren't just collecting data, I said quietly. You were positioning yourself. Daniel's jaw tightened. You wanted to know which executives were getting cut, I continued. Which departments were losing funding. Which bonuses were about to disappear. Lena stared at him. Completely still. And then you were going to act on it. I finished. No, he said quickly. You're exaggerating, am I? I interrupted. Then I leaned forward slightly. Closer. You already opened a second account, didn't you? I said. That did it. His face changed instantly. Subtle, but undeniable. Lena caught it too. Of course she did. What account? She demanded. Daniel shook his head. I don't know what she's talking about. You transferred money last Tuesday, I said calmly. Right after you got access to the updated projections. Silence. 10,000, I added. Just enough to test it. Lena pushed her chair back again. Slower this time. But heavier. You're using internal data to trade, she said. Not a question. A conclusion. Daniel didn't deny it. Not this time. It's not illegal if it's interpreted data, he muttered weakly. That line, that desperate, crumbling defense, only made it worse. Lena let out a breath that almost sounded like a laugh again. But there was nothing funny about it. You're going to get caught, she said. Simple. Direct. Daniel shook his head. They can't trace it back. They absolutely can, she cut in sharply. And when they do, my login is on those files. That was the moment it hit him. Not just what he had done, but who he had dragged into it. I was going to protect you, he said quickly. Lena stared at him, unblinking. You used me, she said. Again. But this time, it sounded final. I watched them both. Carefully. Because now, we weren't dealing with suspicion anymore. We were dealing with a full picture. He needed early access to restructuring data, I said quietly. He needed a clean trail. And he needed someone inside the system who wouldn't question him. Lena didn't move. Didn't speak. But I could see it. Everything was connecting. And when the announcement goes public, I continued. He makes the move. Daniel looked at me. Really looked at me. Like he was finally understanding something. You've been watching everything, he said slowly. I didn't deny it. Yes, I replied. Silence. But now it wasn't tension. It was inevitability. Because there was no version of this story anymore, where he walked away clean. Lena sat back down slowly. Her expression completely changed. No confusion. No hesitation. Only calculation. How far does this go? She asked me. I met her gaze. Held it. Far enough, I said, that if this comes out the wrong way, I let the sentence hang. Just for a second. It doesn't just cost him his job. Daniel swallowed. What do you want? He asked quietly. That question. That exact question. The one people ask when they finally realize they've lost control. I didn't answer right away. Because now, we were no longer talking about what he did. We were talking about what we were going to do with it. And that was where the real story began. The question wasn't what he had done anymore. We already knew that. The real question now was how far we could push him before he broke. What do you want? Daniel's voice was quieter this time. Careful. Measured. Like he was choosing every word to avoid making things worse. I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I stood up and walked slowly back to the table. Picked up my phone. Locked it. Then set it down again. Control wasn't about speaking first. It was about deciding when to speak. What I want, I said finally, is for you to stop lying. Daniel exhaled. Relief flickered across his face. Too quickly. Too easily. That's it, he said. You already have everything. I told you. I'll fix it. No, Lena cut in. You'll say whatever you think gets you out of this. She turned toward me. He's still holding something back. I nodded. Because she was right. Of course he was. They always do, I said quietly. Daniel scoffed. You're both acting like I'm some kind of criminal mastermind. No one responded. That silence said more than any accusation could. He shifted his weight. Uncomfortable. Look, he continued, his tone changing now. Softer, almost persuasive. We can figure this out. There's no reason to escalate things. There it was. Escalate. He was afraid of that word. Then don't give us a reason to, Lena said. Daniel ran a hand over his face again. You already know everything, he insisted. What else is there? I leaned forward slightly, resting my hands on the table. That's exactly what we're going to find out. He frowned. What does that mean? I glanced at Lena, just for a second. But it was enough. Because now, we didn't need to say everything out loud. We're going to give you a chance, I said calmly. Daniel blinked. A chance? Yes, I continued. To fix your mistake. His posture shifted immediately. Hope. Desperation. What do I have to do? He asked. Lena crossed her arms. Watching him carefully, I let the pause stretch. Just long enough to make him lean forward. Just long enough to make him want it. You're going to finish what you started? I said. Confusion flashed across his face. What? You're going to keep working, I clarified. Keep gathering data. Keep acting like nothing changed. Daniel stared at me, trying to process it. That makes no sense, he said slowly. Why would you want me to keep going? I tilted my head slightly. Because incomplete information is useless. That answer landed. Not emotionally, but logically. Lena nodded once. She's right, she said. If we stop now, we only have pieces. Daniel looked between us. Suspicious. You're asking me to incriminate myself further, he said. No, I corrected calmly. We're giving you a chance to be honest, for once. He let out a short laugh. That's not honesty. That's a trap. I didn't deny it. Only if you're still lying, I said. Silence. Because he knew. He was. Lena stepped closer to the table. Her voice lower now. More controlled. If you're telling the truth, she said, then continuing changes nothing. Daniel swallowed. Hard. And if I'm not? He asked. I met his gaze. Didn't blink. Then you prove it. That was the pressure point. Because now, he wasn't defending the past anymore. He was gambling on the future. I don't like this, he muttered. You don't have to like it, Lena replied. You just have to decide. Another pause. Longer this time. Heavier. Daniel's eyes flicked to my phone. Then back to me. You won't report anything? He asked. Not yet. That's what he meant. I picked up my glass again. Took a slow sip. That depends, I said. On what? I set the glass down. Softly. On whether you give us a reason to. That answer did exactly what I wanted it to do. It didn't reassure him. It didn't threaten him. It kept him uncertain. And uncertainty was the most powerful pressure of all. Lena watched him carefully, waiting, because now the decision had to come from him. And whatever he chose would reveal more than anything we had already found. Finally, he nodded. Slowly, reluctantly. Fine, he said. The words sounded heavy, like it cost him something. I'll do it, he added. And just like that, he stepped into the trap. But the most important part? He didn't realize that the trap wasn't about what he would do next. It was about what he had already done and what we were about to make him admit. I leaned back slightly, relaxed, because now we didn't need to chase the truth anymore. We were about to make him deliver it himself. The next morning, everything looked normal. Daniel got up early, earlier than usual, moving quietly, like he was trying not to wake me. Like if he stayed careful enough, none of this would catch up to him. But I was already awake. I had been for a while, watching, listening, waiting. He checked his phone twice before leaving the bedroom, then again in the hallway, then once more before stepping out the door. Paranoia. It had already started. Good. I waited exactly 5 minutes after he left. Then I got up, picked up my phone, and sent a message. He's on his way. Lena replied almost instantly. I'm ready. Of course she was. Because unlike him, she understood what was at stake. By noon, everything was in motion. Daniel had done exactly what we expected. He logged into the system using Lena's credentials. Again, but this time we were watching. Not directly, not obviously, but enough. Lena had already flagged her account the night before. Set quiet. Monitoring on access logs. Pulled timestamps in real time. And Daniel? He walked right into it. Multiple file access requests. Lena texted me. Compensation sheets. Executive restructuring. Updated projections. I read the message slowly, carefully. Then I typed back. Save everything. At 2:17 p.m. Daniel made his mistake. Not the first one. Not even the biggest. But the one that mattered most. He forwarded a file. Not just any file. A full report. And this time, he didn't send it to himself. He sent it to someone else. Lena called me immediately. He's not working alone, she said. Her voice was tight. Focused. I know, I replied. Because that was always the missing piece. The we in his messages. Do you have the recipient? I asked. Yes, she said. Then paused. And you're not going to like it. I didn't respond right away. Because part of me already knew. It's an external address, she continued. Private domain. No company affiliation. There it was. Confirmation. This wasn't just internal manipulation. This was bigger. Much bigger. Can you trace it? I asked. I'm trying, she said. But even without that, she paused again. This is enough. I closed my eyes for a second. Not from shock. From certainty. Because now, we didn't just have suspicion. We had proof of intent. Proof of action. Proof of escalation. He crossed the line, Lena said quietly. No, I replied. He passed it a long time ago. There was a pause on the other end. Then, what's the next move? That question again. But now, it felt different. Because now, we had everything we needed. I walked to the window, looked outside, watched the city move like nothing had changed. Because for everyone else, nothing had. Yet. We don't stop him, I said. Silence. What? Lena asked. We let him finish, I continued. Why? She said sharper now. We already have enough. No, I said. Not enough to end this cleanly. Because that was the difference. This wasn't about catching him anymore. It was about ending him properly. If we move now, I explained, he can still deny intent. Lena didn't respond immediately, because she knew I was right. But if he completes the transaction, I continued. There's no defense left. Another pause. Then, you want him to finish the trade. Yes. That word didn't sound light. It sounded final. Okay, she said slowly. That was it. Decision made. By 4:42 p.m. Daniel made the second move. He transferred the data again. This time encrypted. More careful. More deliberate. But not careful enough. Because Lena captured everything. Every access. Every file. Every movement. And me? I waited. Because the final step wasn't his. It was ours. That night, he came home late. Later than usual. His face looked different. Tired. But underneath that something else. Relief. He thought he had done it. Finished it. Gotten away with it. Hey, he said casually as he walked in. Long day. I smiled. Soft. Controlled. Yeah, I said. I can imagine. He hesitated for a second. Just one. Then nodded. Everything okay? He asked. I looked at him. Really looked at him. And for the first time since all of this started, I felt something close to peace. Everything's perfect, I said. And in that moment, he believed me. That was the final mistake. Because what he didn't know was that tomorrow morning, everything he had built was going to be seen by everyone. The next morning, I didn't wake him up. I got dressed quietly, moved through the apartment without making a sound, like everything was still normal, like nothing was about to happen. Daniel was still asleep when I left. Peaceful, unaware. That didn't last long. By 8:12 a.m., his phone started ringing. The first call, he ignored. Half asleep, he rolled over and silenced it without checking. The second call came less than a minute later. Longer, more persistent. He picked it up this time. Hello, he muttered, voice still thick with sleep. I wasn't there, but I could imagine it perfectly. The pause on the other end. The tone shift. The moment his expression changed. What do you mean? He asked, sitting up now. Fully awake. At that exact moment, I was already inside the building. Not his office. The main office, where Lena was waiting. She stood near the conference room, her posture straight, her expression composed. Professional. Controlled. No trace of last night. No. Hesitation. Everything's ready, she said quietly as I approached. I nodded. HR has the logs. I asked. Yes. Legal. Looped in. Good. Because this wasn't just exposure anymore. This was procedure. Daniel walked into the building at 8:27 a.m. Late. Rushed. Trying to act like everything was fine. But it wasn't. You could see it in the way he moved. Too fast. Too tense. His eyes scanned the room the moment he stepped inside. Searching. For her. For me. For anything that could tell him how bad it was. He found Lena first. Hey. He said quickly, walking toward her. What's going on? I just got, Daniel. Her voice stopped him cold. Not loud. Not aggressive. Just final. Come with me, she said. No explanation. No emotion. Just direction. He followed. Of course he did. Because at this point, he didn't have a choice. The conference room door was already open. Inside, HR legal 2 senior executives waiting. Daniel stopped at the doorway. Just for a second. But that second said everything. What is this? He asked, forcing a laugh that didn't land. No one answered immediately. Because they didn't need to. Lena stepped inside first. Then I followed. Daniel turned when he saw me. And that's when it hit him. Fully. Completely. There was no version of this anymore, where this stayed private. What is she doing here? He asked, his voice tightening. Sit down, Daniel, one of the executives said. Firm. Controlled. He didn't argue. Not this time. He sat. Slowly. Like every movement suddenly felt heavier. HR opened a folder. Thick. Organized. Prepared. We've identified unauthorized access to restricted company data, she began. Daniel didn't react. Not yet. Because he was still holding on to something. Denial. Access logs show repeated entry using credentials assigned to another employee. Lena didn't move. Didn't look at him. Those logs trace back to your home network. That's when his jaw tightened. Slightly. Legal leaned forward next. We also have records of file transfers to external addresses, he said. Daniel inhaled sharply. There it was. The moment. You want to explain that? The executive asked. Silence. Longer this time. Because now, there was no version of the story left. I can explain, Daniel said finally. But his voice wasn't steady anymore. It's not what it looks like. That line. That predictable, desperate line. Lena finally looked at him. And when she did, there was nothing left in her expression. No anger. No hesitation. Just distance. You used my credentials, she said. Simple. Direct. Daniel swallowed. I didn't mean, you accessed restricted data, she continued. You transferred it outside the company. Every word, another step down. I was going to fix it, he said again. But this time, No one believed him. HR closed the folder. That won't be necessary, she said. Daniel blinked. What? You're being suspended effective immediately, she continued. The words landed clean. Sharp. Pending full investigation. Silence. Then the executive spoke again. Turn in your badge. That was it. No shouting. No dramatic confrontation. Just removal. Daniel looked around the room, searching for someone, anyone, but there was no one left on his side. His eyes finally landed on me. And for a moment, just a brief moment, I saw something real. Not anger, not arrogance, regret. But it came too late. You did this, he said quietly. I didn't deny it. No, I replied. And for the first time, my voice carried something different. Something final. You did. Silence. Because that was the truth. And there was nothing left to say. It ended quietly. Not with shouting. Not with chaos. Just silence. The kind of silence that follows when everything has already been said. When there's nothing left to argue. Nothing left to fix. Daniel didn't look back when he left the room. Not at me. Not at Lena. And somehow, that felt more final than anything else. The hallway outside the conference room was empty. Too bright. Too normal. Like the world had already moved on. Lena walked beside me, her heels clicking softly against the floor. Measured. Steady. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she exhaled. Long, controlled. I didn't expect it to end like that, she said. I glanced at her. How did you expect it to end? She let out a faint, humorless laugh. Louder, she admitted. Messier. I nodded. Yeah, I said. Me. Too. We stepped outside the building together. The air felt different. Lighter. Not because everything was okay, but because it was over. For a while, we just stood there. Two women who had been pulled into the same lie and had chosen to end it together. Thank you, Lena said finally. I looked at her. For what? I asked. For not letting him turn this into something small, she replied. For not walking away. I thought about that for a second. Because the truth was, I almost had. 3 weeks ago, before the messages, before the evidence, before the plan. I could have stayed, ignored it, pretended everything was fine. But I didn't. And now, there was no version of my life left where I ever would. You deserve to know, I said simply. She nodded. So did you. We stood there a little longer. Then she checked her phone. They're going to audit everything, she said. Full system review. Legal's already involved. I nodded. And him. She hesitated. Best case, she said. He's fired. A pause. Worst case, she didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. I took a slow breath. 8 years. That's how long it had taken to build what I thought was a life. In less than 24 hours, to see it clearly for what it really was. Are you okay? Lena asked. I considered the question. Really considered it. And for the first time since all of this started, my answer felt honest. I will be. She nodded. Then, after a small pause, if you ever need anything, I smiled faintly. I think I've had enough surprises for a while. She laughed softly at that. And just like that, the tension between us was gone. Not replaced with friendship. Not yet. But something quieter. Respect. We went our separate ways after that. Different directions. Different lives. That night, I came home to an empty apartment. No noise. No movement. Just space. I walked into the kitchen. The same kitchen where it had started. Where he had been cooking. Where I had picked up his phone. Where everything had changed. I stood there for a long time. Then I did something simple. I opened the window. Let the air in. Because for the first time in a long time, it didn't feel like something was missing. It felt like something had finally been removed. I thought that was the end. I really did. Until my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I stared at it for a second. Then answered. Hello. There was a pause on the other end. Then a voice. Calm. Measured. Male. Is this Daniel's wife? My grip tightened slightly. Yes, I said. Another pause. Longer this time. I think. The voice said slowly. You should know. My heartbeat picked up. Not from fear. From something else. Recognition. Because that tone, that careful, controlled tone, I had heard it before. In messages. In forwarded files. He wasn't the only one involved. Silence. And just like that, what I thought was over shifted again. Not loudly. Not dramatically. But enough. Enough to make one thing very clear. This wasn't the end. It was just the first layer.